This is going to be 21 advanced page search tips you can implement today. My name is Don Batsford. I'm a senior account manager with Google, and I appreciate your time today. If you're not familiar with AdWords, and I'm sure you are if you're here, just hang tight. This is going to be assuming that you already know about AdWords and paid search and that you know and love it. And if you don't, then just Google the topics. I have a couple handouts here so you can go through this checklist and re-review things that we talk about after the presentation. So let's just jump right into it. This is going to be as much background as I give you about paid search. It's just overview, and you should probably already be kind of aware for this, either through your professional life or through your usage, where that's I refer to as the number 7. The top is going to be these top slots, which get most of the traffic, are paid ads, and they are text. And then on the top right, you'll see that you have product listing ads, which are being renamed to Google Shopping ads. And those are fed out of your product list, which you're going to upload at a separate place. We'll get into that later. And then on the right are more text ads, and sometimes people refer to this as the rail or the right side. And then on the bottom left is the coveted organic positions, which you can see pointed right there. And that SEO covers that whole topic. We will not touch base on that at all today. So this is all paid search. Okay, so getting right into it, we're going to go over ads, keywords, settings. We're going to go over reporting because little changes in this affect the algorithm. They affect how consumers see you. We're going to try to have the mindset of do what's best for the user, but also think about what Google actually can tell from your ad and how it affects the competitive landscape you're in. So, by the way, I have 4 kids. So how soon is too soon to drink cola? We put it right in the bottle, and you can see that if your kids are doing laps or running around, it's good for them. So right into the first thing about ads is punctuation can make headlines longer. Now, a text ad in something like Google or another paid search site, you're going to have a 25-character limit for your headline. That's the one right along the top, then 35 for the first and second line of description. But if you can get that headline to be longer, it will have a higher click-through rate. And the way you can do this is if you put punctuation and make a complete thought in that first line of description. So let's say you have a sentence and it ends in a period. That's a complete thought. It's a way for you to signal, hey Google, move my first line of description up next to my headline, and you'll get a longer thing. So period, question mark, exclamation point, interrobang. That's not actually a thing, so don't put an interrobang in there. Anything you can. So just think in your mind now when you're writing ad copy, 25, 34, 35. And there are even some examples of, complete thoughts can be shifted around. You should be writing in those anyways, but this is now a click-through rate advantage you're going to have. So right now, if you don't have that in your ad copy, you should have at least 3 ads. And if you don't, this is a great chance for you to write some new for that ad group. Second thing on ads is going to be the Camel Case. So as we all know, keyword insertion is when you use the squiggly brackets and you type the word keyword in. And that can be in your headline. It can be in description line 1 or description line 2. That's kind of AdWords 101. If you want to have the keyword that someone types in inserted into the ad. And if you don't know that, then this is a great chance for you to take this and use this in your ad copy. And you just put the colon, and then the ad copy after it will be, if your, say, keyword search is too long, then we'll just do this as the default. But the subtle part of this is the camel case. And camel case refers to is when you have multiple words and you squish them together, no space, you make the capital letter show where the words start. So you'll see in the first one here, keyword, it has up there in the examples, it has no capitalization. If you were to do a keyword insertion with no capitalization, then your keyword insertion would come in as a lowercase. So if someone types in a phrase, buy cats, they would be lowercase b, lowercase k, or lowercase c, depending if they misspelled the word cats. And if they do the second one, I'm going to make references to cats with a K later on. If they do uppercase K in the word keyword, just the first word will have a capital. And if they do a camel case, which I have here with a capital W in it, then all of the words where it sees spaces, it will then capitalize them. So I like cats, capital I, capital L, capital C, or depending on how you spell the word cats. The camel case implies how you want that capitalization to go, and it takes no matter how they typed it in and puts it in there. So keyword insertion is kind of basic. The camel case is a subtlety that sometimes is forgotten by people when you're using it. So Does keyword insertion click?
No, the Camel Case. Have you seen that?
So click-through rate, let's say you were a client of mine and I was to give you a click-through report, one of the things I would suggest is writing ad copy that has capital letters interspersed in the middle. You see how this ad has great deals on diamond jewelry, and the G and the D and the D and the J are all capital? That's considered to be best practice. Now, there are cases when that's not possible, whether your brand doesn't allow capitalization, you're conversational and you just don't want that to happen, but it's the concept, this is title case. This is capital because it breaks up the way it looks and it stands out. And I would suggest doing that. Also, keyword insertion as a rule, if you're doing keyword insertion, it is the rule of when you build an ad group, and not to get off the rails here on this, but if you build an ad group and you have your keyword and they have the intent they want to see this, then they have the ad which has it, that matches their intent, the user's getting a better experience because they say, oh, okay, and then your landing page that has subject that they want to see, they don't hit the back button. These are all going to be things that are going to be positive. So having the keyword in the ad is a positive thing. So I would highly suggest your ad groups be broken up into the subjects and what they want. But thank you for the question. Please feel free to fire if it's not clear. Sometimes I talk about this stuff, I think it's very obvious, or if it's not obvious, just let me know. I have no concept of the background of where people are coming from when you're talking to them. So site links. So when you're building an ad group, or you're building something in AdWords or in any of these groups, there's going to be something called the Site Extensions tab, which has several different options. And one of the ad extensions is going to be site links. And you'll notice that the #1 spot, which gets most of the clicks, has sometimes these sub-navigation options. These are site links. This one is the completely luxury top-of-the-line version where it has a little description underneath it, almost giving yourself 4 separate ads. And the site links, pose for picture, the site links are an opportunity for you to get the user down deeper into the conversion rate. So when you're talking about the user intent, if they type something like college student deals and your ad didn't say that, but then you had a site link that said college student deals, that's going to be better for them. They're going to see the ad they want. They're going to go into they're going to convert. Not to mention you get a giant ad. And if you think about how many pixels is my ad taking up, this is the way to take up the most ad space. Now, you're going to get a high click-through rate, and you have to have relevancy, and you have to bid in a competitive auction. But if you don't have ad extensions, if you don't remember anything, please put ad extensions in your ad. Do 3 versions of your ad and make sure it has ad extensions for ads. This is really important because it's better for the user and it's better for you. Okay, and then within call extensions, there's a number of different flavors in there. One of them is the call extension. Now, mobile will own the future. That's something that neither you or I can stop. Mobile phones, there's a segment of people who don't have home internet anymore. They just have their phones. That's their computer in their pocket. And if you want to reach those people, there's more people who have cell phones than have toothbrushes. So cell phones are the future. And the most effective way you can really convert those users if you don't have a nice responsive website is to talk human to human. So if you have the ability to take inbound phone calls, put in your hours and do a call extension. On the mobile phone, you can choose whether you want to do a click-through to the website or you can do a ring, and a little dialog box will come up on the phone and they can hit connect and they'll call. So an ad extension on that is going to be something where you're going to be able to connect those people right away. Not only on mobile, this does work on desktop, but the reason I'm saying that is because everybody forgets the computer in their pocket happens to be a phone. There's also a social extension. If you happen to have something, say, like a Google Plus page, you can also link the social extension. This is, again, in the gaining trust and also gaining that ad space up there so that you can have this kind of exposure. The user can see that you are a verified person, you are who you say you are. Thinking about that user-centric mentality, if 200,000 people like you on Google Plus or have circled you, that's a great flag for saying, I have a positive interaction with my consumers because they're willing to hear what I say on a social network. And social extensions are, again, another ad extension. On the ad extension tab, you can plug that right into your existing and continue going on. And it's a great chance if you don't have this to start building it because building a social network and then having it show up in your ad is a positive thing. So at the beginning, I talked about how the ads were in that shape of that number 7. or upside down L maybe. And in the top right, we have the PLAs, the product listing ads, or the Google Shopping as they're now called. This is going to be directly fed out of your Google Merchant Center. So a couple things you want to think about in your Google Merchant Center. When you're uploading to Google Merchant Center, think about the ad, because it's going to be competing against other ads. So if you have a product, now shoes, there's even a few versions of how a shoe is photographed here. But if you have a product that has a box, or you can take it out of the box, the photography of it is now going to be part of your ad. And so if you think about reshooting your ads, just don't put a watermark on them. But if you want to think about having them be attractive to the user and have them stand out, they're going to be in this sea of white. That's how your product is going to be represented. You're going to be coming up with price point. Think about how you're pricing that. And then also think about when you're in this mix that this is going to be next to other ads and organic listings. So you're going to be pulling them down to highly qualified clicks. But you have to compete on price and picture and who your store is, essentially, and whether people trust who you are as a merchant. So let's talk about dynamic search ads. So when you create ads, they give you a couple different versions of you can display, text ads. There's something called a dynamic search ad you can create. So a dynamic search ad, come at it with the mentality of organic search. In an organic search, somebody is building a page, it's got a title tag, it's got body content, and the algorithm is figuring out what's the best content to send along when people make a query. Very much in the same concept, dynamic search ads are taking this, hey, you have a site, what's the best content I can serve up that's an ad to match this person's query? But you have some control. It's not just turn on, it's not a radio button on, off dynamic search ads. You can set cues to it. So for example, if you have in your algorithm, in your string of your site, if you're selling cats and it says adopt as part of your string, or Persian, or kittens, or something is in the URL string already, that can be used as a cue. Okay, all of these people are going to be about that. Why don't you start looking in this piece of my website for it, or in the title tag? You have options. And what's good about this is that if not every part of your website is just buttoned down for SEO, but you do know, you're like, look, the URL, this product, it's toys, it's cats, it's Chewies, it's food, we have this figured out. It's not ranking, but organically, this is a good chance to have that organization you have at least in one part of your site, and then take advantage of it to have ads serve against it. So here's the thing about a dynamic search ad. What a lot of people will do with this, and how the analogy I like to use, think about if I don't hunt, but if you did send the dog out into the field and have it scare up some birds, you might not know they're even out there. Well, think about it this way. If you were to bid modestly and have it scare out, and you might find that there's new things you don't even know exist, and you can start seeing if you're getting conversions and traffic and see how that relates to how your site is organized. So one of the other things is a lot of people feel like they don't have time to really devote anything to display creative building. They've created the ads maybe a long time ago, or maybe they don't have a chance to build these banner ads or what they need. With the Display Ad Builder tool, which is under Tools, Display Ad Builder, that's actually the way you navigate to it in AdWords. You have the robots do it for you. Here is what I did, is I just went to the Affiliate Summit website, and I put in the URL and hit go. And it gave me actually tons of different formats. This is just 3 examples. You can go for themes, and these may not be what you like. You can go for simpler or more flashy. They move. Well, the point is that it will assume what your logo is, assumes what you want for a background. It does a call to action, such like learn more here. And you can go and pick and choose, and then add those ads right into the mix very quickly. And then what you're having is an opportunity to have display ads that are of different sizes. So you're probably used to just building text ads or building display ads, but you'd say, we don't have this size, the designer is busy, or I haven't got it from the client, or I'm never going to get it, I can't pull it out of CJ or whatever. The Display Ad Builder will create it for you. So an opportunity for you to make it here. Okay, so we talked about ads. We talked about how you can do a bunch of different things to just tweak your actual ads, but the intent of the user is most important for what they actually want to see. And that most of the time, except for display and content, and dynamic is going to be the keywords that you put in there. This is an example of what Google would have been like if it had been in paper. This is a postcard where you write the thing and mail it and then send it back. They'll give you a response in 30 days. So there you go. So if that's 1.0 of Google, which even never existed. But for keywords, you're going to want to research. You want to cast that wide net. So when you're thinking about keywords, you probably have assumptions you come into it. You either know it or you've been to Wikipedia and you're getting familiar with the product. You've met with the client. You're knee-deep in it. But you want to use the Keyword Planner in Google or Google Analytics or third-party tools. I have a couple listed here. But ultimately, when you're talking about doing the research, what you're trying to figure out is, what's my taxonomy, what's my organization of keywords going to be? Because if you can figure that out ahead of time, then when you build something later, you'll be like, oh, gee, I want to add this over here, and you feel like you're just shoehorning it in on this one section. You're building an addition onto an addition, and you don't have yourself organized. If you figure it out ahead of time what the grand scope is, even if you don't have them built, or even if you're expanding into a section, just have a plan and think about that ahead of time. And what's also good is they give you volume and they tell you how competitive they are. So you have some sense of your prioritization. You can start at the top and work your way down for third-party tools. Also worth noting that things like Keyword Planner are interesting. Google Analytics has lost a little bit of its punch for research recently because a lot of websites now, including Google in many cases, is HTTPS. And so they're not taking, your Google Analytics is not taking a lot of the keyword referring data they used to. So getting any insight is becoming a little bit more challenging because they're hiding that due to some political things that have happened in the world out there. But any info you can get on keywords is important, so I recommend doing your research ahead of time. And this might be a review for most people, but there are 4 match types, and most people think of, when they build out keywords, they think of broad, phrase, exact. So broad being, you just put the keyword in there, and it's going to match the words that are close to that thematically or spelling-wise. It's going to kind of run around and look for things that have that as a concept. That's the biggest bucket. And then phrase is the one you're used to with, it's in quotes, where that word order. And so if you don't have phrase, you need to put it in. So that word order, those words. And so the phrase is going to be very specific. So in here, these are all shoes. So broad being just formal shoes, and the phrase being formal shoes in quotes. And the exact being formal shoes, those hard angle brackets, just formal shoes. I don't want them typing anything else. I don't care. That's what I want, just that. But then there's this modified broad, which did come later. So some people missed it, which is the plus sign in front of some of these words. So in this example, you'll notice that between broad and phrase, I have the modified broad, which matches a little different because the word shoes has got a plus symbol in front, so it doesn't change. But the word formal is broad, so it can hop around and do other things. So in my example here, the term formal shoes can be evening shoes, black shoes. And that can be powerful because if you want to say, there's one piece of this phrase that cannot change, it has to be shoes. But I'm not as picky about the other ones. Modified broad, something to add into the mix. And so if you don't have these all into your mix, one phrase or another, whether different ad groups or in the same ad group, you should be testing them out and figuring out what the value of these are. The PIRE here is for the mentality I have, you should make a standard negative keyword list. I used to have some files on my computer that were full of words that I won't ever say out loud, but because I never wanted to show up on these terms. There's no concept, there's no version of the universe I want to. Now, in most of the cases, this is not going to be an issue. But if you have a website that might have somebody looking for a fake version, or might have somebody wanting to torrent it, or they might want a free version of it, or a cracked version of it, or a counterfeit version, why would you ever want to be participating in that? Unless that was a corporate strategy where you had the ability to engage those people, make that a conscious effort. Don't stick that in accidentally and with traffic. Tell the user, if they're doing that you have the brand and you have better quality service and products, and engage them correctly. But just don't go into an unknown and just take a big bucket of things. So I personally would advise having a standard negative keyword list that goes in, and then each ad group might have specific considerations of which you should be negative matching. But Those standard ones, that's your base, that's your foundation. All ad groups get that, or all campaigns get that to start. So let's talk about ad group splitting. So with ad groups, you have a bunch of keywords that you've set up at some point. And at some point in the future, it might become obvious to you that you were too aggressive in that, or you added keywords in, you didn't want to build out, and it's time to ad group split. So there's, in AdWords Editor, there's a grouping tool, or even you can do this manually. And the concept is, if you have adopt a cat or kittens, as my previous example, adopting a cat might be something that cat is an adult. That is not a kitten. It's not going to be cute. The person who's looking for that, even though those might be someone who wants to own a cat, and that might be kind of splitting hairs when you're first starting. Later on, that may be the ad copy and the landing pages are completely separate things. The adopting a cat, the person that wants one that has its shots is fixed. They know that it came out of a home and has its habits already. Kittens are the whole their bag. Split those into two separate ad groups, engage them with different pages, engage them with different keywords. Now it's time to split those up. What seemed like just adopt a cat, bring a cat into your house, now we have this ad group splitting, and you should be doing that. You should go with a X-Acto knife. You can even leave your existing ad group as it is. Don't break it, but start to spin off that separate ad group, make it, test it, see if it works, and then make your adjustments from there and see if you can even engage them. You can even bid up on if you're more specific, because you have a higher qualification on keywords and ads. Okay, so we talked about the ads, we talked about keywords. Let's talk about settings. So on the back end, it's not as sexy sometimes as saying, oh, I'm writing ad copy. What do you guys want to do in brainstorming? But the settings can affect how your ads show a lot. So let's go into a couple of those. So when you're in AdWords and you mouse over to the far left, you'll notice that there's a shared library that's part of the rail that can pop up back and forth. And that has a lot of interesting things. These are shared elements across all of them. You can share a budget. So you're finding like, okay, my budget on this campaign is this much every day, and I'm tweaking it down, and I'm tweaking this one up, so that I'm trying to make a total spend of $1,000 a day, or $100 a day, or $5 a day, and you're tweaking different knobs in expectation. Why not make a shared budget? Or those negative keywords we were just talking about. If there's some that you never want to show up for, why not have shared negative keywords? Or if there are certain ads, because of legal reasons or the way that the brand is represented, they need to have common elements, you could have a shared ad. And probably the most important thing in here, I'm going to put my own personal bias in there, is the remarketing lists. And remarketing lists, if you don't have one, it's really easy to implement. You just place a little bit of pixel code on there, and you start to track the users as they go along. That's huge because you can segment people you already know have raised their hand, as far as, okay, this person's been to my site and they have done X or Y. So, for example, one of the things you might want to suggest doing here is, oh, well, let's do one people who have visited but not converted. This person is out or maybe they visited, but now they're looking for a broad, generic term. Why are they pulling away from our brand? Who is this person? These shared elements, this shared list can be then accessed by any one of the campaigns you have out there. So when you're doing your targeting, you're like, okay, this is a remarketing list for search, this is a remarketing list for display, and you can go out there and attack those campaigns with some knowledge of pre-qualification. So if mobile is the future, let's talk about mobile bid adjustments. So I know there's a number of people who are doing pay-per-call. There's a number of people who are doing things where they have help centers, or they have technical resources on the kind of phone so that they can just be customer service, whether that's returns, exchanges for products, retail goods. The mobile bid adjustment is really talking about how you can go and you can focus on the mobile, but also there's this part now we're going to have to consider, it really should have a value of what the click is worth and what the call is worth, because as things go on, you're going to want to be able to make adjustments for that. And what I'll just say is that Google is very aware that the click and the call are very valuable, and so take into consideration what your profit is for these placements, and go out and try to actively go after them as much as you can, and figure that out now, because if you don't, then you're not going to be a player in the future. And you can crank your mobile bid adjustment up to positive 400%. It goes down to negative 100, but it goes up to positive 400. So if you see somebody's on mobile, you're like, we have our landing page figured out. It's just email and zip maybe, or you have this easy interaction, or you've got some phone number on there that you have crackerjack call service people. Figure it out now, and then you can crank up. And just it's campaign, settings, devices, mobile. That's the way to navigate for your mobile bid adjustment. And you'll be off to the races on that one. Now, I said earlier that you should be doing your keyword research ahead of time. And one of those things is because you need to have it organized and figure out and have a taxonomy, an organizational system. You can rename your campaigns as they are today, and I would recommend sitting down and giving this, give it 5 minutes to just say, how do I want to name? And because you say, okay, I have a naming convention already figured out, but why don't you get more ambitious through naming conventions? I have, for example, just top of this is skimming just the cream. You can get much better than this. This is not a best practice by any stretch of imagination. I just punch this up here, the geo, and that could be anything. It could be Detroit, that could be Boston, that could be New York. I have US and UK here. And then the type of inventory. So I happen to have display and search in here. It could be remarketing. That could be dynamic search ads. But if you start to say here, this is going to be that, those can come at the end. You can also use labels. So in AdWords, you can label things with a label that is really easy, and you can find common elements across things when you go to the label. So here's the thing about this, is that when you export this and you're looking at an Excel or Sheets or whatever, and you're looking at this Excel, you can sort by this column. So like, how are US search campaigns doing? Boom, 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 boom. And they're all broken out right there. And you can start to see elements just because of your naming convention. And if you make this so that it's well documented, then if the person who is managing this campaign happens to be doing something else, you don't have to ask them every 5 minutes, what's going on with this campaign? If you're more explicit, it can be handed down. Think of this like documenting code. If you're a heads down programmer and you don't document it, then no one knows what's going on. If you just have A, X, Y, underscore 2, and it's like, what does this mean? It might mean everything to you, but the next person that gets it, you sell your company, you change the manager of it, you do something else, they're going to have no idea what's going on with it. So in the shared library, for the settings, we talked about remarketing lists. I'm going to put an underline on this because the audience tab on the remarketing list is right here. And if you don't have this going on, if you don't have the ability to tag for remarketing lists, I suggest that you should. Because I think of it as if you have a pool in your backyard, just throw the hose in and start the water running it. You don't have to learn how to swim. But if you can, if there's any way you can convince someone to place that pixel for you, building a remarketing list is going to be huge. It's going to allow you to go back after those users later. And as you get more comfortable with remarketing lists, you can say, this person visited brand Y. This person visited brand C. And then you can go, okay, this person wants to see this creative. We can go after that. Or these are converting people. These are people we know. These are unknown, non-converters. That's fine. You don't even have to get there. Just to start, get remarketing in the mix and start seeing that it has a really positive effect on your ads and what you can do with them. So people pay a lot of money for third-party search management tools. And if you go into campaign, settings, bid strategy, focus on conversions, you can have your ads start to do a lot of the algorithmic changes that you would pay a lot of money for automatically. So if you can get a conversion pixel in, you can start to do some automated rules with that. And that can be bringing bids up and down. It can be changing where you show up. And the purpose of all this is so that you're showing up and to inventory and to users who have intent to buy. And you have to have a certain threshold of conversions for this to work. It has to be statistically significant. But if you have had a bunch of conversions over the past set period of time, then the algorithm can say, look, we know where your buyers are coming from. Don't you want to be there? Tell us what that's worth, and then go after it. And those automated rules are really important. So I highly suggest, if you aren't right now poking around in the bid strategy, to just give it a look to see, test it out to see what opportunities there are for you in your campaigns. Yeah.
Question, how does that interact with bid multipliers?
Yeah, so with bid multipliers are something that's focused on the element that the ad finds itself in. So bid multipliers, for example, we were talking about before the mobile, right? It's finding itself on a mobile phone. That's where it's getting its kind of pump there, right there. And if it's finding itself, say, on a Tuesday, or it's finding itself in New York City, it's getting a bump there. This is a separate algorithm based on conversions, based on the fact that it wants to try to go after people. So it's going to make its own assumptions, and your multipliers are going to do that. But this is essentially giving control over to the robots a little bit.
But we'll understand that I have multipliers in place.
Yeah, so we can talk about this offline, but yeah. So the campaign multipliers aren't changed, but this is its own separate algorithm that's making tweaks. And then so under tools we have Display Planner. So with Display Planner, you have an opportunity to explore where you could be placing ads. So if you go into Tools Display Planner, you can say, essentially, what would you like to do? And what are your customers interested in? And where are they? And how can you find them? And what this allows you to do is punch down the different ways you can target somebody. So contextual targeting is one of the most obvious things that people do in display. A page has this subject on it. But also, there are lots of bits of data that are being brought in, demographic, their interests. And if you can start to say, okay, this page might not mention my product or service on it, but I can go after this person who's this age, I can go after this person who's doing this other thing, that's important. Where you're talking about like remarketing, okay, I'm putting out remarketing, I'm going to remarket on YouTube, so when they're doing a search on YouTube, then my content's going to show up there, it's going to show up on display. This is going to be something where you're using your intuition, you're going to be using your knowledge of what it is to go out and plan a campaign. And that's something you want to be able to break out into very specific things, because if you want to have a performance-minded campaign, then you got to have these be able to be tested and to know why your ads are showing up and to think about that ahead of time. So thinking about reporting and then what the ROI is, if the settings are there, then let's figure out how can we improve what we're doing and how can we make them better. And so reporting, one of the things you can do is you can block IPs. And this is most important for in a couple of things where you just don't want your ad to show up. An example that could be used is if you don't want your marketing department to continually be inflating your clicks or to be showing up someplace, blocking IPs allows you to get rid of that double serving that you'd normally have in there. And it's just an IP exclusion. It can reduce the impressions or clicks that are going to be that vanity search. If somebody is saying, okay, this is something where I'm accidentally inflating this spend and impression count, let's just remove that. And if you find it there's things where you just don't want them to show up for whatever reason, you can block IPs. And then the dimensions, the top movers report is a great report for when someone says, hey, things have changed. They've gone up, they've gone down, and somebody's upset or they're happy on the phone, and they want you to know, they want you to be up to speed on what the changes are in the greater internet. You could make assumptions. You could say, oh, it's because of the World Cup. There was a cat that ran on the field, and then the cat sales have come up. Or something else really exciting, a prime minister mentioned something about us. And the princess was seen with one of our products. That's fine, but you could get the answer really quickly with 2 clicks here and not have to guess. So the top movers report, I think, is one that I would recommend you go and look if you just want to have an answer. It's not going to necessarily give you everything, but you can see percentage and change, the actual details of the click-through rate and why that's happening, and it gives you some insight. And then lastly, on the 21 list, I know that there were 21 here. Thank you for sticking with me on all 21. The details for Google Analytics, we're not getting the referral traffic like we used to with the keywords that people are getting. So the only place you're going to get actual keyword phrases that people are typing in the exact phrases is going to be on the new version of what used to be called the Search Query Report, which is under Details, Search Terms, All. You'll actually get the full search term that someone typed in. And the reason with this is, if you think about where the user is when they're typing in something on Google, Google is able to keep their data. This is nobody else's data, it's theirs. And they're cataloging that for you as a paid advertiser. Then when they go over to a third party, to a website, analytics, that's not theirs, it's hidden because of the way the HTTPS is. So this is going to be the place, this is going to be the safe haven for keeping the keyword strings. Now that being said, this is only going to be the full search terms that are coming related to campaigns you have. So if you have a campaign and you think, this is buttoned up, this is 100% everything people are typing in here, I know, go do this in one of your campaigns right now, and you'll be surprised. When we talked about ad group splitting before, this is where you're going to see people are typing in things that you don't expect them. When the negative keywords that you think that aren't a big deal, and you think that your spend is all buttoned up, you go here and you're going to find negative keywords where you shouldn't be spending, and you can remove that. You're going to have a better experience for you, and you're going to have a better experience for the user. So this is probably the most powerful report in it when it comes down to refining what you have for keywords. And that is 21 advanced paid search techniques you can implement today. I do have a checklist, and if there's any questions, I don't know everything, but I can probably try to ferret a couple questions. And if there's not, I just appreciate your time. Anybody? No? In the back?
So with the paper call, you adjusted 400% so every time it's the mobile app?
So the question was, with pay per call, you can adjust it to 400%, and then you said mobile app?
Mobile ad?
Oh, it's a mobile ad. So, right. So with mobile inventory, Google knows if you're on a mobile phone. So if they're on a mobile phone and you want to go after it, in that campaign, in the settings, you can increase the bid for that, if you think it's going to be on a mobile phone, up to 400%. And then that will be a mobile ad, and there's not very much inventory on mobile ads. You'll see it right at the top. And when you're setting up the call extension, the question was, what's with the multiplier on mobile? You can set up, I want my calls to just be a thing, or I want my clicks and calls to be a thing, and you have the opportunity to do a Google forwarding number. So with the Google forwarding number, Google will actually take a phone number that they own, put it in front of the ad, so when people hit dial, it will go through them first, and they'll start to track the duration of that call. What the interesting thing about that is you can, if you don't have the ability to track your conversions on mobile, you can do a duration. Somebody who's on for 60 seconds, I think, would be a well-qualified call. Those conversions will then show up in your interface, and you can take it from there. But it is a mobile ad, and the call button will show up there as an option with call extensions. Over here, somebody? Yep.
Is there site links? If you have a landing page instead of, let's say, a website, then when it comes to other stuff, is it still a good practice to use site links? Then the site links link off to the website instead of the landing page.
Right. So the question is are site links good for links out to other pages? So my question is to you, are they different URLs, or is it still the same page but just different parts of that one page?
No, it's just, let's say if you're doing B2B Legion program.
Yep.
So you have the company website, which let's say has case studies, whatever it might be. Can you use site links for the landing page campaign as the campaign you're running, but the site links link off to your corporate website that has other.
So you're talking about changing then the URL, the actual site it would be going to. So site links are an opportunity to deep link. If you do have a third party that has, say, a review, something to lend a credence to it, there is an ad extension where you can have somebody give a quote. It can be an exact quote or a phrase. They can review your website. You can do that as an ad extension. That's a separate ad extension. That's a third party review of your website. It has to be credible, and you can do it as an exact. You can have that exist, and that's a link that goes somewhere else. And that review extension exists under site extensions. But if you have the ability to go to other deeper parts of your website, that's what you should be doing to help them navigate down to an extra deeper level. If they can self-qualify themselves and bring it down the funnel with a site link. Over here, yep.
Is there a way to target Kindle users with Google Ads?
And target Kindle users? Kindle users? I don't know.
Maybe in the display number.
You know what? I don't know. So I don't know everything, but I do know that in other ad networks, people who are monetarily linked to Kindle, I think there's an opportunity to do that. But you'd have to discuss it with them. I'm not familiar with that. Yep.
Have you had any experience with keyword insertion into display URLs?
Right, right. Yeah. So the question is about keyword insertion into display URLs. So here's the thing about display. So when you're showing up on a display text ad on a thing, Google is making an assumption about the content of a website, and it will come up with a theme. So it's not really down to the individual keyword. That being said, keyword insertion URLs, not URLs, keyword insertion headlines like this example would do something. It would work, and it would assign it to a keyword as it currently is coded. But that doesn't mean that that's one-to-one. So the best practice, what I would suggest, and you can test this out your own, this is your own campaigns, is to come up with a theme when you're doing display for when you're doing contextual marketing and hard code that in. Just be specific with your ad group. If your keyword is never typed but it's assumed to be match, it can have a little bit squirrely results if you're not careful with that. So I would say contextual is thematic and approach it like that. That would be my suggestion. Somebody else back here?
My question was about the fraud. I know that the last 2 years, many companies are already in a system mostly about fraud. Actually, what I read, check this year, 3% of the clicks are fraud. So after you pay the clicks,
So I can't speak to anybody else, but I will say that Google takes legitimate clicks very seriously, and that there is a continual culling of who we would work with and what traffic we would have. And if there is a case where there was a click that didn't need to be charged, you would get a credit back, and it would be you'd see it immediately in your statement. So it's a couple different layers of that, and so. What I will say is that it's taken very seriously. And the question was, is traffic in the United States fraud? So within Google and Google search, I would say that it's not something that's taken lightly. They're very on top of it. And so I feel confident that the traffic that Google provides is quality content. So, yeah.
I just wanted to add, I just looked it up. You could target Kindle in Google Display Now, not search.
There you go. So the answer to the question was about Kindle, and this gentleman in the front said you can target Kindle devices apparently from his research. So there you go. So that's good to know. And now I just learned something. So that's awesome. Anybody else? Okay, great. Well, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, I'll just be here a couple minutes afterwards. And feel free to take a handout, and I'll see you later. Thanks.